And there's no religious candidates, foundation, under God, into this law, the liberty of justice. Getting a roll call.
Mayor Feldman.
Here.
Councilmember Robinson.
Here.
Blumenauer.
Here.
Bauer.
Here.
Benedict. Here.
Thank you. All right, moving on tonight to agenda, do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Rewar makes that motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Bauer makes a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, thank you. All right, moving on tonight to consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Councilor Robinson makes that motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Ludwig makes a second, any discussion? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries, thank you. Read over the public, Jenny, I see nothing. Okay, we're gonna move on right to, new business. A, comprehensive plan amendment rezoning.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take that one. Oh, let's see what's opposite. There we go. All right, Mayor and Council, before you tonight are two requests for the Serenity at Sealy Brook project. These requests include a comprehensive plan amendment and a rezoning. This is a about 22.5 acre site located outside of the city's urban service area. You can see it's a vacant site, which abuts Sealy Brook on its northern side. And it has frontage on County Road, which is Bridgestone Road. This is a development concept that was reviewed back in February and March. If you remember, there were quite a few concepts for different numbers of residential lots that came through the Planning Commission and the City Council. The feedback from the city at that point supported concepts with lower densities on the site. So 4 units, 2 units typically. So the site is currently guided for agriculture use in a comprehensive plan, which allows a maximum density of 1 unit per 10 acres. The applicant is requesting to re-guide the property to the rural residential land use category. And that has a maximum density of 1 unit per 5 acres if you're going to subdivide that in a typical fashion. As you can see, the site is surrounded on its east, west, and northern sides by that rural residential land use category. The site is zoned A2, which is the Rural Estate Agriculture Zoning District. The applicant has requested to rezone the property to the Rural Residential Zoning District, which would comply with that comp plan amendment that's requested. The Planning Commission reviewed these requests and held a public hearing at their April meeting. There were a number of members of the public that were present. Most of the discussion focused around the access points that would result from a subdivision in this area. Especially because this is a county road along a curve. So there were some discussion there and some concerns. And then the other kind of area of discussion was about the developable land, which really isn't something we get into in more detail until the preliminary plat. But as you can see, there were some wetlands on the site, especially with this year's flooding. Some of the residents and members of the public were discussing that. As far as, is there actually enough developable land to have primary and alternate septic sites and building paths and things like that. So that's really something that's up to the developer, and that's kind of the next step in the process and not quite where we're at right now. So the Planning Commission did recommend approval of both of the comp plan amendment and the rezoning. And tonight, council action is requested for either approval, denial, or table. And the suggested motions are on your screen. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, I see here on page 28 of the packet that says there, staff also shared that Milwaukee County has reviewed the request and did not have significant concerns with the potential future development of the site.
Yes.
So it seems like the curve is not an issue with them.
Correct. They, kind of their comment back was that they would help or suggest kind of clustering the driveways as much as possible, so 2 by 2 or whatever it may be. Just to keep those access points kind of closer together rather than spaced in a consistent frequency. But they didn't have strong concerns.
All right, and the size of these lots will be 5 acres, right? The property lines will be adjusted for 5 acres.
So, Mayor and Council, we are not to the subdivision process yet. The density is 1.5 acres, but in the rural residential zoning district, you can have a lot that's 2.5 acres. That's the minimum.
Right, but is that, what's the intent of the developer? Four
Uh,
fives or what?
Well, the developer's here tonight.
Is that,
Yeah, my name's Eric, curious about the intent on that. I would like to do 5 lots if I could, if I can't. Well, actually, I can't because of the acre, so yeah, it's just doing 4 lots. I don't know if you can pull up the aerial one more time.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, so the eastern wetland basin. No, it's right over here. This, because of this wetland, right there, basically you can't really put road and driveways through, so my intent would be. Since the woods, tree lines, that's kind of like a natural buffer, that would be 1 lot there. And then the other 3 lots will be right in there, and basically each one of the 3 lots can have at least 300 feet of frontage, and the lot sizes, I think it's like basically a little over 4.5 acres per lot, and then the eastern lot, obviously, a little bit bigger.
all right, I have no problems with this at all, so at this point, where it's at, I'm for it, so I'll pass it on to Kevin for your any comments.
My only concern was what the county had in mind, and I guess we'll see what happens down the road, but they had no concerns at this time, and they're gonna assist the developer in what access points for safety. You say that was the biggest crux of the P and Z meeting as well, so I'm good.
Bill?
Nothing to add.
Rob?
My biggest concern is the person that buys that 4.5. Can't do what the other 3 can. So I would like to see the lines kind of shifted so that it's 5 across the board. So it kind of works with the idea of being able to have their little hobby farm and everything that the city says we can have on 5 acres. That's just my concern, but I'm for it.
Sarah? All right. So we don't need a motion to adopt a comprehensive plan amendments for rezoning, is that what you want to do? All right, do we have a motion to adopt a comprehensive plan amendment rezoning?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Rebar makes the motion, do I have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Robinson makes a second. It's, of course, we just have a full vote, right? Okay, barring any further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
We do need the action on the reasoning as well.
Right, so the next one, I'm just doing step by step, or you want to do it all together? Just step by step. Right? For the next one, approval of updated private development standards, that,
No, so there's one more action for this.
For this one?
This is the rezoning, so it's an ordinance. It's the second motion on the screen.
So I'll make the motion to approve the first reading ordinance 312, approving the rezoning request. Rezone the 22.5 acres of land between Ambassador Boulevard and Bridgestone Road northwest from A2 to RR.
all right, you made the motion.
Perfect.
I'll second.
All right, Councilor Bauer makes a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ordinance, isn't it?
Oh, it's an ordinance, right? Where is it on the sheet here that I'm not getting? Where's it on the sheet?
So, well, there's 312 not on there.
312 is not on the sheet, so I printed it out. Or did I turn it? There you go.
Mr. Mayor, in the way that the agenda came together, the resolution and the ordinances didn't come to the agenda, so they are just on the memo for this item.
I have them on mine. That is true.
Oh, I don't remember mine.
Trying to play games with you guys. Off for one speed, else they come back and see 312.
Yeah, Mayor, we have, it's working on some devices and not others, but,
I'm 73 years old, but I'm not gonna kill you yet. All right. We have an ordinance, so Jenny, do a roll call, please.
Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmembers Updike. Aye. Bauer,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Mulebauer. Yeah.
Okay, so anything else that goes with that?
No, that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Am I okay going to 9B for approval, approved updated private development standards? I'm okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, let's get here at sync. Okay. All right, item 9A, 9B rather is approve updated private development standards. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the city's private development standards include details and product-specific information for developers to reference when planning and constructing a new development. The standards were last updated in 2013, therefore, many of the references and material specifications were outdated. The private development standards have been updated to reference current bituminous mixtures, current manufacturer specifications, and other minor updates. Private development standards have also been updated to include standard details for the city code revisions that are currently being considered. These city code revisions include adding standards for rural roads and rural service areas, as well as standards for private streets. The updated private development standards have been reviewed by public works staff and have been coordinated with the community development department and planning staff such that they could correlate with the proposed city code revisions. With that, I would stand to answer any questions.
All right, Craig, this was a lot. I could say that was a lot of stuff there. I mean, this is one of the times where I myself, I look through it. But to me, you know, can only understand so much of it. So this is where I found the expertise of engineering, of public works, and department staff in that. So as far as I'm concerned, it looked good in general to me. But I'm going to go by the expertise of the entities I mentioned. So I'm good with it myself. So Sarah, your comments?
That was pretty much what I was gonna say there too. I did look through it and it's a lot to digest and I agree with you. These are the times when we trust our staff.
Okay, thank you. Rob?
I agree, because I didn't have the side-by-side look of what was changing versus what this is written up about. So I'm going to also bow to that first.
All right, Joe?
I would echo that as well. Pretty boring, so, for a lot of the stuff.
Kevin?
I would also echo that as long as it's a housekeeping situation and doesn't shift any additional burdens, then the city's already borne on previous developments and status quo, so I'm good.
All right. So I have a motion to adopt, to approve the updated private development standards. So I have a motion.
I'll make that motion. Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Rubik makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Councilor Robinson makes a second. For any further discussion, this is just a vote, right? Just a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Thank you. I want to make sure we're on the same page as you said. Okay, moving on to item 9C, code revisions, parking, roadways, and stormwater first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, before council tonight are a number of code updates. So these are coming from a few different places for why we're bringing these before you tonight. First is that the city recently went through an audit with Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. That audit found a few minor revisions that are needed in zoning code stormwater section. And then with the private development standards that we just discussed, the creation of those or the updating of those precipitated some code revisions related to roadways and parking that we need to talk about. So there are amendments in both the zoning chapter and the subdivision code tonight that I'll talk through. Planning Commission held a public hearing and reviewed the zoning changes. Planning Commission does not review or hold hearings for subdivision. So they were informed about them, but they don't have a recommendation on those. So the zoning code amendments, the first again is the stormwater related amendments. These are coming out of that NPCA audit. And really, it's just minor revisions to section 108204, which clarify when infiltration systems are prohibited. And then there are a couple of parking standard changes that are requested. The first has to do with parking lots outside of the urban service area. And the idea would be to allow those rural parking lots to have a different surface material or design requirements than those that are inside the urban service area, as long as an IUP is obtained. And the idea there is that, you know, there may be some uses in the rural area of the city that don't need a paved parking lot, don't need curb and gutter, or that it's not appropriate for. And this lets that flexibility happen without needing to look at a variance or a code amendment. The second parking standard is related to zero lot line parking, and this is in the B1 district, which is the central business district on Bridge Street. Zero lot line parking is currently allowed in the B2 and the business park districts, but it's not something that's allowed in the B1. So staff is proposing to allow it, which basically means you could have a parking lot kind of on one side and the other side of the lot line, but there's no space in between. This would not this is still something that would allow a 5-foot setback from any right of way. So we're just talking about interior lot lines. Questions on those before I move to subdivision?
Council?
No? Okay. All right, subdivision code, this is really focused on the design of streets for a number of different elements. So the first is that there is now a rural local road section that is part of the private development standards. And so staff is updating the code to clarify what the standards are for those streets, specifically talking about right-of-way width and pavement width. So you can see that the rural road is actually has a wider right-of-way but a narrower pavement. The reason for that wider right-of-way is to allow room for the ditches, since this is a rural type of road. The next element here is private streets. Currently, private streets are only something that are allowed with the plan unit development. And staff has had some requests in the last few years that make it seem that it would be appropriate to not only allow them only in PUDs, but allow them for certain circumstances without having to go through that process. And so the requirements are kind of constructed to outline when they're allowed, how they're supposed to be designed, and the maintenance of them that's needed. So the idea would be that private streets are only allowed in the urban service area. And then there are widths established for right-of-way and pavement, so they can be no smaller than those widths. And then there's other kind of elements of when they would be allowed. So any private street can't have kind of a public interest for traffic circulation. So it needs to be more of an access, a very local type road. The private entity would be responsible for construction and maintenance of that. There's some language spelling out exactly what happens when there's public utilities under private streets. And then the idea that the city is not going to accept back those private roads unless they are to public standards. Next element is the road curvature. Currently, the city has site distance requirements for how much a road can curve. That's actually a measurement that isn't used very frequently. It's not used in the peer communities around here. What is used is curve radius. So that is the measurement that staff is suggesting to replace this site distance with. And the idea is that there's some flexibility built in here. So when you get to the higher level roads, the arterials, the collectors, the idea is that there's not a specific number for what that radius needs to be, but the road needs to be designed for the design speed in that area. When you get to the local roads, the idea would be that there's a 300-foot curve radius, but that can go lower than that if there are natural features or other reasons why it would be appropriate to do so. And then the last one here is about cul-de-sacs. So staff is requesting to increase the allowable length for cul-de-sacs and the allowable density on them. So for length, this would increase the allowable length for urban and rural cul-de-sacs. So for example, right now the urban cul-de-sacs are allowed to be 500 feet in length maximum. Staff is proposing to raise that to 750. Same with the rural, about raising it 250 feet. The idea of the numbers in parentheses on there, that is a requirement of the code that allows, so for example, again, in the urban area, you can have a maximum of 500 feet, or 750 if that road is intended to be extended later to serve some land that's not currently divided, but will be in the future. And then for the density, currently the code allows a maximum of 16 units on a cul-de-sac. Staff is proposing to increase that to as allowed by the fire code, which I believe is 30 units on the cul-de-sac.
All right, so the premise is that the intent is to extend the job.
Correct, yeah, it'll be extended in the future. So planning commission held a public hearing and reviewed this at their meeting. There were no comments from the public. No big comments from the planning commission either. They recommended approval of the zoning code amendments. So there are 3 actions for you, all ordinances this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
No, once again, there was a lot here, you know, and I follow again the expertise of the people that we hired to do that type of work and staff. And I would say that taking clarification and taking gray areas out is always a good thing. Never a bad thing, especially when you're like some of these documents here are in a 10-year time frame, 10 years back. You know, 13, there is 23, and we're dealing with old zoning. That's just not proven a good business as far as when we're growing. So we want to get a sync together with developers and with the new code and so on. So I think myself, it's a lot of work for you guys, but with good end results. Not for myself. Joe, your comments?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think it's mainly housekeeping and kind of improvement for future growth.
Kevin?
I agree. I appreciate the work they've done to it, and it just keeps us up to date.
Sarah? Yep. Okay. Rob?
I just need clarification on the roundabouts. What are the units like? If there's an apartment building put on there? To me, you can't divide up a cul-de-sac into 32 little pieces. You can't, I just don't, it didn't register with me.
Yeah, yep. So Mayor and Council, the idea of the cul-de-sac is that currently you can have 16 units, which is not just in the bulb of the cul-de-sac, but along that entire street.
I gotcha.
Yep, and so that would be raised to what fire code is, any dead end street. That's what we're really talking.
I was trying to divide it up.
Yep.
And the backyard is gonna be huge, so you got barely enough for the driveway. So I'm good.
Okay, we'll take this item by item then.
Correct.
For a roll call, right?
Correct.
All right, do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 313 approving amendments to Division 7 Development Standards of the zoning code as presented by staff? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Revo makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Whitworth makes a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call, Jenny.
Councilmembers Robinson,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Hedvig,
Aye.
Neilbauer,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman.
All right. Okay, moving on to the next item. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 314 approving amendments to Divisions 8 Stormwater of the zoning code as presented by staff?
Make that motion, Mayor.
Councilor Robinson makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Bauer makes a second. Bauer, any further discussion? Jenny, do a roll call, please.
Councilmembers Bauer,
Aye.
Robinson,
Aye.
Neilbauer,
Aye.
Hedvig,
Aye.
Mayor Feldman.
Aye. All right, moving on to item ordinance 315. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinance 315 approving amendments to section 8, comment 11-43-02 streets of the subdivision code as presented by staff?
Make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Whitworth makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Bauer, Bauer makes a second. Bauer, any further discussion? Jenny, do a roll call, please.
Mayor Feldman,
Aye.
Councilmembers Neilbauer,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Hedvig,
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you, staff, HKGI, for the hard work you did on that, because I could see it was a lot of work. But the end result was good, very good business. All right, meeting open to the public. Do we have anyone, Jenny? No? Okay. Reports, Dave, you're on.
Mayor and Council, for your review tonight is the fire department monthly report for the month of March. Our response time did see close to a minute decline year-to-year comparison from 2022. And we saw a slight drop in run volume from 2022 to 2023. A decrease by 2 runs on the year. The average number of firefighters responding to calls was up slightly at 5.3 for 2023. And we see a pretty standard delineation between our fire and EMS runs for the month of March. 9 fire runs and 37 total EMS responses of the month. Our advanced variance usage was a little bit light for the month. That typically shows that the acuity of our EMS calls was fairly low, which is a good problem to have. 2 ambulance response times over 20 on the month. Just a quick snapshot into April, we have seen that number start to increase, but our volumes are also increasing pretty significantly into April and as we begin May. So that probably has an impact on that as well. And for our fire inspections, we had 8 initial visits with 6 re-inspections for a total of 14 site visits on the month. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, Dave, I see the blue collar is up as usual. It seems to be a normal school. Just always seems to be high.
It's pretty common intervention that we use.
One COVID. And as usual, I mean, I see the EMS higher than the fire. This is not a trend anymore. This is just the way it is.
This is the pattern.
Yeah, that's just the way it's gonna be from now on. At first, I thought it was a trend, a year ago, but it's not that anymore. So,
It's here to stay.
yeah, good and bad, same time. Good fact that there's lower fires, but on the other side of that, so. Joe, you have any comments?
Good report, and, send our appreciation to all the firefighters and staff as well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
The glucometers again, of the 9, are there some of these repeat patients again that are, I know you, in the past, we talked about education and some people don't have people nearby that they can reach out to, so they call 911, which is why you're here.
Yep. Without looking at the actual calls for the month, I couldn't tell you if there's any repeat or visits for the month. It's not uncommon, I will tell you that. Diabetes is on the rise in this country and quite frankly all across the world. Diabetic care is harder and harder to get. So we do see that increasing year over year for probably the past 5 years. But whether specifically in March, this was tied to duplicate visits to the same address, I have to look.
Can you offer any additional services, whether it's be through the county or a follow-up with, I know you're not social workers, so you can only do so much, but is there any other avenue that that you take or any protocol that you're allowed to do to help curtail some of that? Again, to help the people first, but again, if you've got 4 firefighters showing up at each call, and it might be a repeat customer, and God bless them, but is there anything that you can do outside the realm to further the channel of communication for these people so they don't have these incidents? Because I'm sure they're embarrassed as well too. You guys show up and, I mean, there's lots of things involved.
Yep, there's a number of challenges here. One is there is a lack of continuity of care between emergency response, emergency room visits, going back to their primary care provider, and then also filtering through what additional services may be needed. The other challenge with that is things that we typically would escalate to the county, not per se just because of a medical condition, but because of other underlying factors. They have to triage a lot of caseload at the county level. So getting those resources and assets out to people continues to be a challenge, not just for St. Francis, and not just in Oak County.
Sure.
So there is challenges there. There are things available as far as potential avenues to go down. Community health is a growing field. It hasn't quite got to this area yet. But I see that becoming a wave of the future for our residents to be able to leverage. There's just really no good answers right now. One of the biggest challenges we just talked about at our chiefs meeting last week, the availability of primary care appointments right now has declined pretty significantly. So people that normally would go see their physician and get their primary care level on a regular basis are having more and more difficulty accessing primary care. So that becomes a challenge as well.
Well, a lot of factors come into play that a person can think about.
It's a very different world even from 3 years ago in some of these areas, there's no doubt.
Can you give me a definition of community health, what you mean by that, or what?
Yep, so in a lot of departments, more in Hennepin County, this kind of stemmed from North Memorial. They created a community paramedic program. Over the last probably 18 months, we've seen now community EMTs that can go out and do site visits and try and help people navigate some of their medical conditions to try and prevent either 911 calls or readmits to the hospital. We're a little bit challenged on the staffing side. But that is something that is coming and has shown some success in areas that are utilizing it.
And then is something like that be branched out by the fire departments if you haven't, I want to create more work for you or have other fire departments, have they taken over that challenge?
Typically, that's where that service is now coming from. Is the fire. There's, I can tell you 4 fire departments in the metro and the county that are running community. And they're actually doing door-to-door follow-ups, post 911 call.
All right, well, thank you for the in-depth, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great report. For Robinson, I just want to kind of ask the question of the variance usage. Not necessarily are there 9 specific calls because there's low blood sugar. It could be used as a tool to figure out what's going on with the patient. And 9 of those patients were tested to make sure that their blood sugar was either high or low. And, because if you look at the variance usage, it doesn't equal to the 37 calls. So it's just tools, and that graph is used within all 37 calls. What did some of the things that we did. So that's kind of how that graph looks. And I just wanted to make sure I was speaking correctly and kind of
Sure.
give a little guidance on what that graph looks like. But other than that, great report. Tell, you guys, they're doing a great job. I like the fire inspections. Evan,
He's doing a great job.
yeah, thank you.
I will. Oh, thank you, sir.
Yeah, Sarah?
Great reports. I like seeing the inspections, that's always a good thing, our businesses are a good thing, or if they're not, then get, or again, just great job for you, your staff, and all that, we appreciate it.
Hey, Dave, as far, I saw in there about the fire engine on the consent agenda,
Yes,
the old one.
yes.
Do you know what the original price was of that unit?
I could probably go back and look, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I know it's more than $5,000.
Yeah, absolutely. Much like vehicles, once apparatus hit that 15-year mark, they really lose value. At the 20-year mark, they're almost hard to give away at that point.
Yeah.
Engine one a few years ago, we dedicated that out to surplus and offloaded. I think we got $250.
Oh, geez.
So,
Or how much you get for it, that's worth.
right,
Well,
and we spent several months trying to talk the buyer for everyone like that.
all right, and the change with the new lieutenants, has that been a benefit for you?
It certainly helped. It certainly helped. You know, the biggest relief with the lieutenants has been, we have been able to divvy out our duty officer rotation more significantly. We're starting to see more and more increased volume on the overnights. Our duty officers typically do a week rotation, so if you're getting up 4 or 5 times during that 7-day stretch, they appreciate an extra week off or an extra 2 weeks off with those lieutenants in that rotation.
All right, so they can do that with lieutenants, okay, very good. Thank you very much, good report.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to council member reports. Sarah, I'm going to start with you.
I attended the work session last Monday, and I just want to remind people again that the weather being nice, watch for kids and pedestrians out walking, biking, and if you're going for a walk, grab a bag so you can pick up some garbage around our street.
Rob?
I also attended the work session. There was a lot to digest in work session as well. Other than that, I apologize. I had some medical needs. I missed a few meetings through the month of April, but I'm on the mend. So very good.
Kevin?
I attended the planning and zoning meeting on the 19th of April, and then I also attended the work session last Monday. Also attended the recycle day on Saturday from about 8:15 to 1. Tom does an awesome job with his crew there, and the KFC guys are always fun. They work from the metal to the leaves. The traffic was a little light as far as customers, but those who were there were very glad that this is happening. And doing the shredding and the appliances, and then watching Ace crush couches, and I can see there's quite a few trampoline casualties that happened this year in town. I think we had 7 of them. It was kind of a race between trampolines and then what was it, lawnmowers and whatnot. There was another, I forget the other item, but it was just kind of, the stuff's not laying in the ditches and stuff of our fair city, so that's a good thing. So, but that's all. Thank you.
All right, Joe?
I did the Citizens Academy at the police station and with Hayes, so that was interesting. Was at the work session as well, and coming up on the 3rd year with the EDA meeting.
Okay, very good. I also was at the work session. they're long work sessions, but they're fruitful, we get a lot done. And I also will be at the ED meeting myself. I'm gonna put. Just a great thank you to all the staff and everything. You know, there's a lot on our plate, by the way. We have a lot. I don't, St. Francis Post page, the work, you know, on the annual report from the police and the fire, police fire, I will be doing public works already done, and all police. The amount of work that they do besides their regular duties every day, and along with council too, by the way, these work sessions are long and fruitful, but they're a lot of work. And I don't think people realize that if we have a short meeting here like we are going to have today, which is always appreciated, but not normal for us. There's a lot of work that you don't see that we do, as Kevin has brought up many more times than I have. So I hope that people appreciate what's the end results of those hard work sessions are, because we take it seriously here, we do a lot of work here, and a lot of hard work here. But we do it all together and end up with good solutions to our issues. The mayor of a city like this, and staff like this, that can take on an issue and solve it, because that's really what we're here for, to benefit the residents that we serve. So once again, a good thank you to everybody, to all your staffs. I can't do it individually, but I always want to say to your department guys, pass that off from us, from council to you. It's just nice to see that the issues that come forth do get worked out, but they take a long time to work out. I think again, people realize these just aren't 15-minute meetings or work sessions that are short in and out. We take governing here very seriously in the city of St. Francis, and we've done that for 6 years, moving on to the 7th year. So I just want to thank everybody. It's just a good way. It's a good way to do business as we do it with clarification of zoning and stuff like that. I don't think people, they're not looking at the packet like we are to see how much work is in it. When I get a 195-page packet on a Friday, or I get a 255-page packet on Friday, I'm looking at these things and scrolling through it, and I'm going, oh my God. I was like, really, seriously? The work that you put in is good for the city as the end result of clarification, taking various out, making it easier to do the business that we do. But I appreciate that along with council. I know they do too, by the way. It's easy for us to pass stuff out to you guys. So thank you so very much for all that. Okay. And I want to say now that summer's hopefully here. I go along with Sarah, be careful with people on pedestrians walking and biking and that. Hopefully, like I say, it's going to be here. I hope we don't see any snow. Okay. So we'll see how it goes from here. But anyway, any further business we have to do?
No further business.
No further business. Well, then I'm gonna take advantage of it. Short meeting, and I'll adjourn.